Okay, welcome to Prep Station UTME Literature in English 2025. So this time around we'll be running through UTME questions for literature in English, and literature in English is broken into various segments for the UTME. The first section you have literary devices, the second you have the seen and unseen prose or poetry, and then the third you'll be asked questions on the recommended literature texts and poems. I'm sure you know that this is the last year that the recommended text to be used. So we'll run through some questions just to refresh your memory. Let's look at the section on literary devices. Question 1. What two main aspects make up the setting of a story? A. Character and conflict. B. Time and place. C. Mood and theme. D. Plot and resolution. Remember, we are looking at setting. Setting in literature involves the time and place where a story or a work was done. So the answer to this question is time and place. Question 2. In which narrative point of view does the narrator directly address the reader using you? A. First person. B. Second person. C. Third person limited. D. Third person omniscient. The answer to this question is second person. Remember, first person narrative technique makes use of the first person pronoun, which is I. Second person makes use of the pronoun you. And third person limited, one hears the story from the point of view of a particular character, from the eyes of the character, while omniscient the writer looks at all the character like he or she were the eye of God method. So in this case, we are looking at second person narrative point of view. That's the narrative point of view that makes use of the pronoun you. Number 3. What point of a story's plot comes immediately after the climax? A. Rise in action. B. Exposition. C. Fall in action. D. Resolution. The answer is fall in action. Remember, you start from the beginning of a play, and then that starts with the conflict, then the climax, then the fall in action that leads to a resolution. Question 4. What is a dynamic character? A character who does not change throughout the story. B. A character who changes significantly due to events in the story. C. A character who is based on a historical figure. D. A character who only exists in the protagonist's imagination. A dynamic character, another name for a dynamic character, is a round character. So a dynamic character is a character who changes significantly due to events in the story. You notice that character, probably if an ideology is introduced, that character learns and also tries out certain ideologies and changes significantly based on lessons he or she must have learned. Question 5. Which type of conflict occurs when a character struggles with an internal dilemma? A. Man versus man. B. Man versus the society. Man versus self. D. Man versus nature. The answer to this question is man versus self. Internal dilemma, and then when you talk about conflict, you're looking at a struggle. So it happens internally, so it's man versus self. Question 5. A universal theme is one that A. only applies to a specific culture. B. can be understood across different times and places. C. is based on a single character's experience. D. focuses only on personal emotions. The answer is B. can be understood across different times and places. That's for a universal theme. The next question. What type of plot structure starts in the middle of the action rather than at the beginning? A. in media res. B. flashback. C. linear plot. D. frame story. When you look at flashback, you're looking at events that have happened in the past and a character bringing it forward. Linear plot is a plot that is chronological, beginning, middle, and end. Frame story could basically be seen as maybe the plot. Then, but medias res starts from the beginning of an action, middle of an action, and then probably takes you forward or backwards. So this answer is in medias res. Question 8. What literary element creates the emotional atmosphere of a story? A. Mood. B. Theme. C. Tone. D. Conflict. The answer is mood. Mood has to do with the atmosphere of a story based on maybe the writer's choice of words. Tone is the writer's choice of words and how it affects you as a reader. Question 9. Indirect characterization is revealed through A. The author explicitly stating the character's traits. B. A narrator's opinion of a character. C. A list of character details at the beginning of the story. D. The character's actions, thoughts, and interaction with others. Indirect characterization is revealed through the character's action, thoughts, and interaction with others. So from the character's action and thoughts, you get to know who the character is. Question 10. What is the purpose of a flashback in a story? A. To slow down the plot with unnecessary details. B. To provide background information about a character or event. C. To predict what will happen at the end. D. To change the genre of the story. The answer is B. To provide background information about a character or event. So flashback takes you to events that must have happened in the past. And in this case, by so doing, the readers or the viewers have background information of a character or event. Now we move on to the next session, which is unseen prose. Remember, because it's unseen, we do not know the person who wrote this excerpt. The excerpt is picked from a book or from a poem. So let's look at this together. The smell of fried plantains filled the cramped kitchen, thick with the heat and memory. You never listen, Mama muttered, her hands busy peeling yams, her eyes avoiding chemis. Outside, Lagos roared, honking cars, the shouts of market women, the restless hum of a city that never slept. Kemi wanted to tell her mother the truth, to rip open the silence that had settled between them like dust. But old wounds like salt water, they burned before they healed. So let's look at the question. It says, Lagos roared, honking cars. The above line is an example of A. Simile, B. Personification, C. Onomatopoeia, D. Irony. The answer is an onomatopoeia. Why? Because you're looking at the sounds here reflected in this excerpt, okay? So Lagos roared. Roaring is synonymous to the sounds the lions make. So in this case, you're looking at the sound or the noise coming from the city of Lagos. So it's an onomatopoeia. Question 12. The mood from the excerpt is dash. A. Sad. B. Joyful. C. Optimistic. D. Tense. The answer to this question is tense, because from the excerpt, Kemi wondered whether or not to tell her mom the whole truth. And her mom was already tense while she was peeling yams. So there is some sort of seriousness, because Kemi was wondering if it was best to tell her mother the truth at that point. So the atmosphere, the mood is tense. It says, question 13, old wounds were like salt water. They burned before they healed. The figure of speech used is A. Simile, B. Personification, C. Irony, D. Oxymoron. The answer is simile. Old wounds are being compared to salt water. So the answer is simile. The next excerpt, let's use this to answer questions 14 and 15. They said Mama Ayana was mad, that she spoke to the stars and danced barefoot under the full moon, that her laughter echoed in the hills long after she was gone. But Nia had seen the truth. On the night of the harvest, when the river sang and the air shimmered with light, she had watched her grandmother rise, her feet leaving the earth, her body spinning like a whisper in the wind. And just before she disappeared, Mama Ayana had turned and smiled. Questions. What narrative technique is used in the excerpt? A. Third-person narrative technique. B. First-person narrative technique. C. Second-person narrative technique. D. Fourth-person narrative technique. Remember in previous slides, I explained that first-person narrative technique makes use of the first-person pronoun. Second-person narrative technique makes use of the second-person pronoun. There is no such thing as the fourth-person narrative technique. Third-person narrative technique makes use of the third-person pronoun and sometimes is omniscient or limited. So since we have not been asked whether it's limited or omniscient, the answer is third-person narrative technique. The expression "when the river sang" is what figure of speech? A. Irony. B. Personification. C. Euphemism. D. Simile. The answer is personification, because the river is given a human attribute, which is singing. Let's look at the next excerpt to answer questions 16 to 18. The night hung over Umuofia like a mourning cloth, thick and heavy with silence. Okonkwo sat outside his hut, his face carved from stone, his thoughts a river rushing against its banks. The world around him had shifted like a tree uprooted in a storm, its roots dangling helplessly in the air. The white man had come, not with the force of warriors, but with words that crept like ants into the cracks of the clan, wakening the bond that once held them together. A fire burned in a clay lamp beside him, its flame shivering in the breeze, much like the spirit of his people. He clenched his fist, calloused from years of labor, but strength alone could no longer shape the world to his will. He had built his life like a great wall, stone upon stone, discipline upon discipline, yet now it crumbled at the edges, worn down by unseen hands. The ancestors, though mighty spirits who once roared like thunder, seemed distant now, their voices buried beneath the foreign prayers that floated through the air like dust. Okonkwo's heart, once firm as the earth beneath his feet, felt as if it had turned to water. He could hear the rustling of palm fronds, whispering secrets he could not understand. The land of his father was slipping away, and he, Okonkwo, the son of the great Unoka, the warrior who feared weakness more than death, stood powerless before it. He wanted to roar, to break the silence with the voice of the Umuofia he had known. But the night swallowed his sorrow, leaving only the sound of the wind whipping through the trees. He thought a river rushing against the banks. The above is what figure of speech? A. Simile. B. Irony. C. Hyperbole. D. Metaphor. The answer to this question is metaphor. The mood used in this excerpt is A. Excited. B. Solemn. C. Joyful. D. Lonely. The answer is solemn. It's solemn because Okonkwo is reflecting on his life and how far he has gone, okay, and what Umuofia used to be like before the white men came. So it's solemn. It's like more or less like a sober mood. What point of view is used in this excerpt? A. First person. B. Second person. C. Third person. D. Fourth person. The answer is third person. Remember, the narrator gives a general overview, even to Okonkwo's thoughts. So I would even say third person, omniscient point of view. It's not limited at this point. So it's an omniscient point of view, and the narrator is giving us a broader view as to Okonkwo's thoughts. We move on to the next excerpt. It says here, the night was thick with the scent of damp earth and fear. Unjoroge lay still in the hut, his breath shallow, his eyes straining to catch the whispers of the wind. But there was no wind tonight. Only the muffled sounds of footsteps crushing the grass outside, slow and deliberate, like death pacing before choosing its victim. A sharp knock shattered the silence. It was not the knock of a neighbor or a traveler seeking shelter. It was the knock that came when men disappeared into the night, when the world outside swallowed them whole and spat out only rumors of their fate. His mother stared beside him, her hands trembling as they reached for the youngest child. "Stay still," she murmured. Though her voice carried no comfort, the words felt like a cloth draped over a wound too deep to heal, soft but useless against the bleeding. Then the door creaked open, and the light of a lantern slashed through the darkness. The figure at the entrance was faceless in dim glow, but Njoroge knew what he had come for. His father's name had already been spoken in hushed tones, whispered like a curse by those who feared the wrath of the new masters. Outside, the knight stretched his arms wide, ready to embrace another life. We'll take a break from here and then we'll continue.